My name is Galvin Preston, and after 12 years as a Navy SEAL, I thought I knew what danger looked like. Turns out, it wears a necktie and knocks on your door with a clipboard. But before all that, I lived the quiet life. Silver Creek, 40 minutes outside Portland, nestled in trees and trust, was the place I chose to rebuild. After losing my wife Meredith to cancer 4 years ago, I left war zones and firefights behind to give my daughter Erica something softer. And stability, security, the kind of normal other people take for granted. I became a cybersecurity consultant, working from home so I'd never miss a school pickup. Erica was 8, sharp as a tack and obsessed with dinosaurs. Our porch doubled as a paleontology lab most evenings. Velociraptors, stegosauruses, and her rock collection became part of our daily routine. Our backyard wasn't big, but it held more peace than any battlefield ever could. Silver Creek was a dream. No HOA, no lawn police, no letters about garbage cans left out too long, just good neighbors and quiet weekends. That last detail, the absence of an HOA, was actually a selling point. After years of taking orders, the idea of someone telling me what color to paint my door was borderline offensive. We had teachers, engineers, veterans, even a retired astronaut who hosted telescope nights for the kids. Everyone looked out for each other, but no one controlled anyone else. Until one morning when Carol Jenkins, our next-door neighbor and Erica's honorary grandmother, knocked on my door holding a fancy envelope. "Galvin, did you get one of these?" she asked. The letter inside claimed Carol owed $300. 0 cents for non-compliant garden ornaments. Specifically, the painted rocks Erica made her for Christmas. That's when people co-opted exercises so profound, the schools crumbling, mutterings affected the community. Bipartisan protected... that's Carol... We don't even have an HOA. Ground shifted beneath Silver Creek's freshly trimmed lawns. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next part. I dug into it. The letter looked official, clean fonts, intimidating language, a seal that screamed bureaucracy. But the email was a Gmail account. The phone number had a Nevada area code. The website registered 2 weeks ago to a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands. I set up a neighborhood group chat, and within an hour, 7 more families said they'd received the same letter. Mr. Watanabe was fined $500, 0 cents for his koi pond. The Hendersons were nailed for having a trampoline visible from the street. My favorite, the Garcias, for having too many potted plants. It was like being fined for jaywalking in a town with no roads. But here's the kicker. None of us had ever agreed to an HOA. There was no vote, no formation papers, no record with the state. Just violations. How do you break a rule that doesn't exist? I asked out loud, staring at the letter like it might blink first, but the more I looked, the more I realized this wasn't confusion. It was a con. 2 days later, 3 men in cheap suits showed up at Carol's door. I caught it all on my security feed. Graying hair, fake binder, fake smiles, and real threats. They claimed to represent the Silver Creek HOA and said they were collecting fines in person. One was built like a prison yard regular. Another looked like he'd borrowed a suit from his dad's closet. The third kept scanning Carol's porch like it owed him money. When I stepped outside to confront them, the one in front flashed a too-wide grin. "Mr. Preston, I presume? We've been trying to reach you about several violations. Also, as a single parent, there are additional compliance checks concerning your daughter's well-being." That's when I moved between them and my house. "There is no HOA here," I said. "You're going to get in your car and leave. If you come near my home again without a badge and a warrant, you'll find out exactly how bad that idea is." They didn't flinch. Instead, one of them angled his phone to snap photos of my front yard. And then one aimed right at Erica's window. When someone in a cheap suit asks to see your kid, that's not compliance, it's war. My military instinct, long dormant, roared back to life like a bear poked one too many times. This wasn't just a scam anymore. It wasn't about fines or fake bylaws, it was about power, threat, control. And they'd made a critical mistake. They didn't just pick the wrong neighborhood. They'd picked the wrong house, the wrong father, and the wrong little girl to use as leverage. That night, after tucking Erica in, I didn't sleep. I turned on every system in my house, every feed, every tool I'd used to track enemies overseas. Because these men thought they were running an HOA. But what they didn't know was they'd just filed paperwork on a battlefield. The second those fake HOA goons turned their eyes toward my daughter, I stopped being a neighbor with a Wi-Fi password and became the man I used to be. I didn't spend 12 years in the SEALs to let 3 amateurs in rented suits outmaneuver me. That night, after Erica went to bed with her dinosaur encyclopedia still open on her lap, I powered up my war rig, my basement home office, high-speed processors, air-gapped backups, secure VPN chains, and enough open-source intelligence tools to make the NSA blush. I wasn't just going to find out who they were, I was going to dismantle them digitally before I touched them physically. What I uncovered wasn't just surprising, it was nauseating. Edward Dawson, the ringleader with the too slick smile, had a trail of revoked real estate licenses, sealed fraud indictments, and underground forum posts bragging about extracting leverage from stubborn homeowners. Marcus Reed, the muscle, had gang tattoos disguised by a cheap button-down and a rap sheet that included extortion, assault, and 1 count of unlawful detainment. Tyler Watts, the tech guy with the anxious eyes, was the ghost. Until I cracked metadata on the PDFs they used, his name was buried in the author tags. From there, it was forum handles, IP traces, and finally a cloud drive stuffed with dossiers on every family in Silver Creek. These weren't grifters, they were termites, slowly chewing through the timbers of people's lives, cashing out before the whole house collapsed. But it was what they had on us that dropped a hammer on my chest. My file was flagged as priority. Why? Single father, prior combat exposure, deceased spouse, and then in bold, daughter equals leverage. They had surveillance photos of Erica at her school, notes about her routine, even screenshots of her birthday party invitation on Carol's Facebook page. This wasn't harassment. This was tactical coercion. They didn't see a little girl with velociraptor drawings taped to her wall. They saw a bargaining chip with pigtails. And me, I wasn't a neighbor to them. I was just another name to pressure, a signature they hadn't gotten yet. That's when the temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. They wanted a fight. They were about to get a war. SEALs don't retire. We adapt. We rewire. I wasn't just going to stop these men. I was going to ruin the entire network behind them. I started with the obvious. Backdoor access to their cloud files, keylogger injection into their burner phones, and GPS tagging on a Suburban they kept creeping past my house. Next came the misdirection. I planted fake financial statements showing I was underwater on my mortgage, set up a burner email chain hinting at an impending trip that would leave Erica home alone, and for good measure, I left a few receipts sticking out of my recycling bin, alluding to a foreclosure lawyer. They thought they were playing chess. I'd brought a flamethrower to the table. My war room became the nerve center. Every motion sensor on my property was upgraded. I embedded IR cameras in the trees. I wired pressure plates under the mulch by the gate. Every entry point logged, monitored, time-stamped. I knew their digital rhythm, their vehicle movements, their lunch spots. I even knew Tyler's favorite Reddit thread. But most importantly, I knew they believed they were in control. And that, right there, was their fatal mistake. They threatened my daughter. They broke the last rule I was still trying to live by. Let the past stay buried. Now, I was digging up every weapon I ever trained with. Only this time, I wasn't bringing them to a battlefield. I was bringing them home. For Erica. For the neighborhood. And for every family they thought they could bully without consequence. By the time the trap was ready, every square inch of my house had been converted into a tactical maze disguised as middle-class normalcy. Erica was safe at my sister's up in Seattle, happily digging through her rock collection and eating more sugar than I'd ever allow. Her absence gave me the room I needed. I replaced her in bed with a child-sized mannequin dressed in unicorn pajamas and a blonde wig that matched her ponytail perfectly. I even left a half-drunk glass of chocolate milk on her nightstand and scattered some homework across her desk. It looked like a kid's bedroom. It was actually a legal landmine. The rest of the house played its part. Motion sensors hidden in potted plants, pressure mats under rugs, cameras tucked behind air vents in picture frames, even inside the hallway smoke detector. I left bait bags that looked like tech gear near the office door, each one rigged with GPS trackers and die packs. A few light bulbs were rigged to flicker as if there were power issues. It was messy in just the right ways. The entire layout told a story, a stressed-out single dad with a tech job, barely holding things together. If they'd been smarter, they might have paused. But guys like this don't pause. They pounce. It was 2:08 a.m. when my phone buzzed with the silent alarm. Perimeter sensors lit up like Christmas morning. Through my garage camera, I watched their Suburban roll up in blackout mode, no headlights, just slow movement and cowardice. Dawson led the way, holding a thick binder under one arm like he was about to deliver a city proclamation. Marcus had a crowbar tucked behind his back, and Tyler, ever the anxious tech boy, was juggling a laptop and a tiny handheld camera. They looked like amateurs, dressed for a role they didn't understand, walking into a script that didn't belong to them. They didn't break into a home. They wandered into a story with a violent ending. I let them work the lock. Tyler bypassed the keypad in under 45 seconds. Impressive, if I hadn't left the system open on purpose. The moment they stepped inside, motion sensors kicked into silent recording. They whispered like burglars in a cartoon. Get the papers from the office. Check the upstairs. Kid should be asleep. Don't leave prints. I heard the thump of their shoes on the stairs. Tyler filling the hallway. Dawson whispering to Marcus to grab her and get out fast. Every step, every breath was caught on camera. I was already behind them. The moment Marcus opened Erica's door and reached for the mannequin, I stepped into view. No words, just the quiet presence of someone who's trained for decades to end threats before they start. Marcus turned and lunged. I shifted, wrist lock, snap. Elbow hyperextended, his weapon dropped. His scream echoed. I moved to Tyler, who tried to run, heel to the back of his knee. Crack! He went down, whimpering, clutching the leg I'd just folded the wrong way. Johnson fumbled for a pistol. Wrong move. I disarmed him with a twist that shattered 3 fingers. Then a knee to the thigh. Dead leg. Another to the patella. Shattered. He was down, moaning. It took 30 seconds to remind them what a Navy SEAL looks like when you threaten his child. 30 seconds to strip them of whatever confidence they had left. They weren't burglars anymore. They were broken men on my floor, crying, bleeding, recording themselves into a lifetime of felonies. I zip-tied their hands, calmly, methodically. Every movement measured. I wasn't angry. I was focused. That was worse. As they lay there whimpering, the cameras kept rolling, because justice wasn't just what I did to them, it was what I was about to do with the footage. And the crawl? Oh, that was still coming. By sunrise, every camera in my home had recorded enough evidence to launch a federal investigation, and then some. But I wasn't going to let them slither away quietly. Not after what they'd tried to do to my daughter. I gave them a choice. I could call the police and have them dragged out on stretchers, or they could crawl to the station on their own. It was 6 blocks to the Silver Creek precinct, and with 3 busted knees and 2 dislocated elbows between them, That asphalt road was about to remember their faces and their blood. They paved their road with lies, then crawled it with bloody knees. Neighbors started coming out around the third block, woken by the ruckus, or maybe just the pure novelty of watching 3 grown men in torn suits crawling through a suburban neighborhood at dawn. Carol brought out a folding chair and her camera phone. Felix followed on foot, radio in hand, making sure no one tried to limp away. Pete, our neighborhood PI, was already uploading footage to a secure drive. There was no shouting, no violence, just the sound of zip ties dragging, knees scraping pavement, and the occasional pained grunt when Dawson hit a bump in the sidewalk. By the time they reached the precinct, they were soaked in sweat, faces pale, suits shredded, dignity obliterated. The local detective waiting at the door, Rodriguez, looked from them to me and said, "Well, I guess it's true what they say. Karma's got good knees." Inside the station, I handed over 2 flash drives and a thick folder. "Everything you need, in chronological order," I said. "This operation goes beyond Silver Creek. I've got names, addresses, LLC registrations, even offshore accounts. Griffith's at the top of it." Rodriguez's eyes widened as he scrolled through the folder's contents. "Holy hell," he muttered. "We've been chasing pieces of this for a year. HOA scams, intimidation rings, dirty real estate flips. We just didn't have the glue. You've got the glue." He called in 2 more officers to begin processing. Meanwhile, I sat and quietly watched as the 3 men were separated, questioned, fingerprinted, and formally charged. Within 48 hours, federal agents were involved. Griffith was arrested trying to board a private jet out of Seattle with $5 million in crypto wallets and a duffel bag full of burner phones. The files I'd provided triggered a RICO case. Racketeering, wire fraud, conspiracy, child endangerment, and more. It turned out their scheme had touched 6 states, 22 neighborhoods, and displaced nearly 50 families. They weren't just crooks. They were architects of abuse, wearing HOA badges and whispering legalese into people's fear. But they hadn't counted on Silver Creek. And they definitely hadn't counted on me. Griffith's empire fell faster than it had been built. Apex Investments went bankrupt within days. Investigators raided their offices, seizing hard drives, ledgers, and emails. Several of his top executives were indicted for related schemes. Griffith himself took a plea deal to avoid life in prison, 25 years, full restitution to victims, and a mandatory public apology that aired on every local news station from Portland to Phoenix. Dawson got 15. Marcus got 20 for the assault and weapons charges. Tyler, the tech boy who thought he was invisible, got 7, and a mandatory registry tag for attempted crimes against a minor. The justice system worked that day, but not because it's perfect. It worked because a community stood up, because a father refused to be scared, because the neighborhood didn't just watch. Silver Creek rallied. And in the end, they didn't just lose their freedom, they lost their masks. The whole country got to see what happens when fake power meets real consequences. They built an empire on sand. Turns out I brought the storm. The fake HOA was gone, but we weren't about to let its ashes fertilize the next scam. In the weeks after the arrests, the neighborhood came together, not just to celebrate, but to organize. We didn't create a new HOA. We created something better. A neighborhood watchdog group, no fees, no fines. Just a network of folks who kept their eyes open and their phones charged. Felix, with his calm presence and cop instincts, was unanimously elected president. His first rule? No one, under any circumstances, was allowed to use the word violation, unless it involved a barbecue sauce stain or a dog digging up someone's tulips. We weren't interested in telling each other how to live. We were interested in making sure no one else ever tried to take over our homes again. It wasn't about bureaucracy. It was about trust. We put up signs at the entrance of Silver Creek. No HOA, just neighbors. Every new family that moved in got a welcome basket and a rundown of what happened, complete with a USB drive labeled how not to get conned. And it worked. The energy changed. We started hosting monthly potlucks. Felix set up a neighborhood text alert system. People who used to nod politely from driveways now traded tools, shared recipes, and swapped stories on Friday nights. No bylaws, no lawn police, just neighbors with each other's backs. We didn't just defeat the predators, we vaccinated the community against them. And right in the center of it all, Erica's rock collection. What started as a handful of hand-painted stones became the centerpiece of the Silver Creek Community Garden. She called it the Curiosity Patch. Every kid got to contribute a rock, each labeled with a fun fact or message. Around it, vegetables sprouted from raised beds. Bees buzzed through pollinator flowers, and families harvested tomatoes next to lavender bushes. The same yard art that had been called non-compliant ornamentation was now a permanent feature, celebrated in local newspapers and featured on a morning show under the headline, "From Threatened to Thriving, One Girl's Rocks Inspired a Town." They tried to use her as a weapon. Now her curiosity grows vegetables. Eric never really understood how close she came to being a pawn in a con, and I hope she never has to. But what she does know is that her rocks matter, that her ideas matter, and that when the world tries to scare people into silence, sometimes you fight back with a garden and a good pair of gloves. One evening, she stood by her plaque, Erica's Geological Wonders, and looked up at me. "Do you think the bad guys will try again?" she asked. I knelt beside her. "Not here, not ever. Because now they know, Silver Creek fights back." But something in me had shifted too. I couldn't just go back to cybersecurity audits and passive firewalls, not after this. I started consulting on HOA scams, helping neighborhoods recognize the signs. I spoke at town halls, testified at hearings, even helped a few senators draft legislation tightening regulations on HOA formation and requiring transparency on enforcement actions. I used to defuse bombs. Now I diffuse paperwork packed with intimidation. I turned everything I knew from the SEALs, from cybersecurity, from Silver Creek into a new mission. Not just to protect my family, but to protect families who'd never trained for this kind of war. The media called me a hero. I shrugged it off. The real hero was an 8-year-old girl with a Sharpie, a rock, and a dream. Me? I was just her backup. But if anyone ever tries to play HOA hardball again in our country, they're going to find out fast. The age of blind compliance is over. And sometimes the best place to plant justice is in a garden. 3 years later, the garden is still blooming. The sign for Silver Creek, "No HOA, just neighbors," is a local landmark now. Even got featured on a few Instagram influencer pages with captions like, "Where community means community." Erica's in middle school. She's taller now, has a few more questions, and a lot more rocks. Every Friday, she adds a new one to the garden, some painted, some labeled with scientific names, some just pretty things she found on our hikes. The neighborhood? It's thriving. Property values went up, crime went down, and peace? It sits on every porch like a worn-out cat in the sunshine. They tried to erase this place. Now it blooms on their grave. I still keep an eye on things. Habit, I guess. Old seals never fully stand down. But I don't patrol out of fear anymore. I do it out of gratitude. Carol teaches the new kids how to plant. Felix keeps the block watch sharp. And when a stray solicitor shows up with clipboards and big words, the neighborhood handles it like a comedy sketch. "Are you registered with the Department of Mind Your Own Business?" a neighbor asked recently. We don't live paranoid. We live prepared. There's a difference. One evening, as we were watering the garden, Erica looked up at me with that same no-nonsense gaze Meredith used to give when she wanted the truth. "Dad," she said, "did you really break their knees?" She was older now, smarter. Not just asking about the story, but about what it meant. I thought for a second before I answered. Let me put it this way, I said. Sometimes people don't learn from being told. They learn from limping. And those men, they weren't there for a conversation. They were there to take what wasn't theirs. So, yeah, I stopped them. Because sometimes you don't need a lecture, you need a limp. She nodded slowly, then smiled. Okay, she said. That's fair. Later, she added a new rock to the collection. It said in bold black Sharpie, "We protect our own." That one stayed front and center. So, let me turn this to you. If you've made it this far into the story, you already know what kind of world we live in. It's not always safe. It's not always fair. And sometimes the people knocking on your door aren't selling cookies, they're selling control. That's when you have a choice. Do you let them in? Or do you stand tall, plant your feet, and knock back? Because truth doesn't whisper. Unity doesn't ask permission. And justice? Justice doesn't knock. It kicks in the door. If someone comes to your house flashing a badge made from a printer and fear, don't freeze, don't fold. Gather your people, raise your voice, document everything, and then bury them in the facts. This isn't about being a hero. It's about being human in a world that sometimes forgets what that means. Because no one has the right to make you feel unsafe in your own home. No rulebook can override your gut. No ordinance can outrank your instinct to protect what you love. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from. And if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.